hope for the world is found in the message and mission that the church is called to share. The local church is a community of baptized believers living in covenant together, under the authority of the Bible, to worship God and engage the world as ambassadors for Christ. As we seek to know God and make Him known, it's helpful to rub shoulders with people who are serving the church well. We are the Time with Giants show. Join us as we spend time with giants of the faith, walking with God among us. Whether you are walking with God or are seeking to learn more about Jesus, welcome to our show.
Well, hello, everyone. We are back.
We are back. We're so grateful to be back with you for Season 3 of Time with Giants. And if you forgot, my name is Emily Kuykendall.
And I'm Chris Wall. And, you know, we've had a little hiatus because there's been a development in the Emily Kuykendall and Nathan Kuykendall world.
Our son was born. He was born on January 2nd, and we are grateful to be back in the podcast studio with a little addition outside of the womb.
Yes, and it's exciting. He is joining us today because he's about to go to sleep. And so at this podcast, if you are watching, you can see this awesome little bundle. If you are listening, if you hear some gurgling sounds,
it's not me.
It's not my stomach. It's my grandson. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty awesome to have him. Hey, we are excited about this third season. Thank you for joining us. And it's going to be a great time getting together. Emily, share a little bit about what's happening in Season 3.
We are pumped about Season 3. This season, we are taking a look at the church. We are talking about different aspects that make a healthy church. And to do that, we are interviewing people from our church who exemplify these things really well. So today, we get to talk about giving.
You know, our podcast is Time with Giants, and the goal is to spend time with giants of the faith who are walking with the Lord. And we're going to look at different disciplines in the church that we need to put into our lives. And today we have James Callison with us. I've served the Lord with James for a while. He's a member at First Baptist Owasso. And James, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This will be fun.
We're excited. Now, James, we want to lean into a topic that is uncomfortable for many. And it's got a bad rap in many ways. And it's the idea of giving. You know, money talks sometimes make people nervous, but it's important to learn this discipline in our walk with the Lord. So thank you for joining us. And you know, you're a blessing in our lives, in our church's life, and you've learned how to give. So let's process that a little bit.
Well, and it's really neat to have you today, because I think in our church, we hear a lot about giving from pastors. And so sometimes people can kind of brush it off like, yeah, you're telling me to give so you can have a salary. But you have learned the discipline. You've learned the benefits of why God calls us to give. It's not just to pay our pastor's salary. It's to grow our church, to serve our community, for all the things that God uses our giving in our church for. So would you share a little bit about how God taught you to give?
Absolutely. Well, I think starting out with, you can't read the scriptures without running into giving almost every chapter. And it's all through the Bible. And so as you process that and you look at it, it gives you great insight to not only the idea and discipline of giving, but it also just I call it a heart issue. To me, the biggest change that's occurred to me once I and my wife started giving, it's really the change in our heart, how we think about things, how we think about money, how we think about people. And there's an old saying that I really kind of hang on to, and if I can quote it, I think I can get it right. So those that steal, like the thief, you know, your money is my money, and I'm going to take it. And if it's really on someone that's selfish, it's more along the lines is my money is my money, and I'm going to keep it. And I think the real Christian approach that's taught in the Bible is my money is God's money, and I'm going to share it.
You know, I think that's a really important point, because I think sometimes when you hear the message of giving, it comes across as if, hey, you give and God's going to bless you, which is true. There's a biblical reality, revelation of that. But the truth is, giving is a calling we have because God's already given. He's already blessed us. Let's process that a little bit of that balance between giving out of gratitude rather than giving to get something. Does that
Oh,
help us,
absolutely.
help us understand that?
I think giving the the fact that you may or may not get something given back to you, that's a byproduct. It's not the reason you give. Now, do I believe that you give and there's great opportunity that you're opening the door for gifts to come your way also? But you should never, two rules, kind of never give with an expectation of something else being given back to you. The scripture's full of that. I mean, you go out and you bless people around you that can't possibly pay you back. And that's really cool that goes along with that. And then also just the fact that when you give, there is a real chance that you can give because if you think about it, if you're giving, you have the opportunity to give more. And if you're not giving, well, then you're being kind of that closed fist kind of activity that I'm not sure why you would continue to increase and get more funds unless it's just to spend on yourself. So I think and besides that, giving's fun.
Mhm. It is a blessing to give. I mean, Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive.
Right.
And and I think that so many believers have not yet learned the true joy of becoming a giver. And it's amazing how, like you mentioned, how much the Bible speaks of giving. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the Bible speaks so much about becoming a giver?
It's not just about money. Most of the examples about giving are about money and funds, but really, normally there's a different story behind it. And it's really about what God has already given us. And it's a great illustration. And I think because you said money is so sensitive to people, I think that was Jesus's way of communicating and saying, grab your heart. I'm going to talk about your money. Now we can relate it to other things. This is the approach that you're going to take. And now I've got your attention. I talked to you about giving me some money. I probably have your attention. Now I'm going to talk about the general principle that's behind that and how that's going to change your heart and change your life.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing a story of how you've learned in your own experiences that it is more blessed to give than to receive?
I don't want to get a lot of specifics, but I think what's really interesting to me is as we start giving and we move in that direction, it just continues to magnify and roll itself up. So, example, if you're someplace and all at once you see somebody in need and you would really like to help them, but you're not healthy enough yourself, and that balances with how you save money, how you handle money yourself. It's not just the giving of it. How do you personally handle your funds? But if you see someone in need and you can't, you really would like to help them, but I can't. I'm financially strapped and can't. So being healthy enough then to be able to give is a huge step in that direction too. And you'll see needs all around you. You'll see the person that can't buy their groceries. You'll see someone, and sometimes it's just encouragement. You see the firefighter, you see the policeman and his family walk over and pay for their meal.
Mhm.
You'll hear stories about those individuals telling in the future that are just heartwarming. Somebody came up and felt enough love for me and enough appreciation for what I do that you bought my meal. No one's done that. You're stepping outside of what is normal and you're stepping into what God really wants you to do, and that's encourage people with your giving.
And it sounds like it really opens up your eyes to see other people.
Oh, you do. You see them everywhere. And and it's interesting to me how God works. It's like I can see a need. I don't get any internal prompting at all to help them. It's I see another need, and it may even just be a soft spoken whatever, and it's like I gotta go do something. I gotta help that person. I
Mhm.
don't even know why. God knows. And under the covers, it may be something real silent. They haven't even made public, but they need an extra $100. I don't know why, but I'm gonna give it. And then when you see the look on their face and maybe a tear out of their eye, you hit home.
You bring up something so very important about planned giving. Plan to give.
Oh, yeah. And
And
this is outside I'm even not
yeah,
talking about church giving yet.
yeah,
I'm just talking about being healthy enough
yeah,
to be able to give
yeah,
both at church. It starts at church.
yeah,
That is your number one
yeah,
responsibility as far as I'm concerned. But it goes beyond that.
yeah. I think that's so very important. I think that when you get a taste of that, of really being able to help somebody, it is so meaningful. Years ago, we went on a mission trip, and I raised about $1,000 of cash. And I said to these kids, "We're going to pray about who God leads us to give this money to." And we had stopped for lunch, and a family had car trouble, and some of my kids um, overheard them, and they were like, "We don't know what to do." And they were they gave them about $800 to get this part.
Hmm.
And this family was just couldn't believe it. And these teenagers, you could just see them going, "That was amazing."
Amazing.
And like what you're talking about is being used by God and planning for that. We're living in such a debt society. We don't plan for the margin to give. Such an important concept.
So you hinted a little bit that you would be willing to share how you started giving. So how did you do that? How did you build that into your budget and into your life?
Okay. So I'll take a couple of minutes, give a little bit of background. So I was not grown up I didn't grow up in a church. My mother was Lutheran, and so it was kind of private about how she spoke about different things. My dad didn't ever grow up really in a church, but we did start attending a little country. I lived on a farm, a pretty poor farm, but we had a little country church. We had a vocational pastor that would come in and speak. And so even as a kid, I would observe passing the plate and people dropping a little bit of money in the plate to help both that pastor, the church, and just help fund the activity. So, oh, okay, there's giving. I don't know why. And are people just tipping God, or what are they
Yeah,
doing? And it
that's a
wasn't
great point.
like
Yeah.
a methodical kind of approach. But after I got saved, I was 21 when I actually got saved. And then Vicki and I, actually my wife, we started attending church more regularly and doing Bible study. Well, just like I said, the whole Bible's talked about giving everywhere. And so um, there's verses that talk about on the beginning of each week, allocate money, Corinthians, and talks about then you're ready to give. And so we really started praying about it. We'd been giving some off and on, but we said we've got to start somewhere. And we had gone through Larry Burkett. I mean,
Yeah, I
he was
remember
the
it. Yeah,
pre-runner
we
of the
studied
Dave
him.
Ramsey
Yeah.
kind of activity,
Robin and I went through that.
envelopes, and when we got married, we moved into an unfurnished apartment that had like two pieces of furniture. And so Vicki and I would save a little bit and we'd save up and we'd go buy a piece of furniture. It was a great time in our life. Even though we didn't have a lot, it was a lot of fun. We worked together. What next piece of furniture? We need a couch. We need a bed, whatever. And so we went through all that and we started accumulating a little bit more and kind of got through the initial 4 or 5 pieces of furniture we need. And so then it was like, we need to start giving at a church on a methodical basis. 10%, we'd heard 10%, the tithe. We didn't really feel led at that point in time to do it, did we think we were able. Might have been, but didn't think about it. We charted out that we were going to start giving 3%. You got to start somewhere. We were going to give 3% of our income, but we were also going to save 3%.
That's good.
Because we had the idea that you had to be healthy, you had to have emergency fund, you had to be able to do both things. And, you got to protect your family and take care of your family. So we did both. And then each year, when I got a raise or Vicki got a raise, she was working at that time, first thing we would do is take an extra percent and add that to it. So 3%, next year it was 4. A couple of years we got 2%. And over a process, I can't tell you if it's 5, 6, 7 years, we were beyond 10%. And did we miss it? Because it was just allocated. It was almost like payroll deduction tax. in a methodical approach is what I'm saying. It just came out and it was given. And we just continued to increase that. And again, just never missed it. Now, do I think I was blessed because of that? We can talk about both sides of that. We just saw so many blessings. We saw times when we were going to be $300 or $400 short a month. Couldn't figure it out. we'd get a check from a tax rebate, or we would get something in the mail. And a number of times, it was almost to the penny of what we needed.
Wow.
That's a God thing. That wasn't me. And I'm not saying that'll always happen. It happened to us. So my testimony is it's okay to give.
Yeah, to learn to trust the Lord with our finances, recognizing that everything we have is His, and then to learn to trust Him in that is, I think, such a critical biblical discipline. Now I want to lean into something. One of the things that I'm seeing in trends, because I'm a pastor and I've been paying attention to, the trends in church, the new generation of it's a different day, especially post COVID, all those things. But I grew up knowing that the church was the primary first target of my giving. For many,
Now the church is one of
or
the targets.
what you're seeing in trends is church giving is declining while other nonprofit giving is increasing. I am a preacher, so I have a response to that, but you explain to your conviction. You just mentioned that the church was my first target. And I know you give above the church, beyond the church, but why is that? Why for you is the church your first target?
It just feels, not only feels right, it is right, in my opinion, that you give to the church. Now, you're talking about the world and nonprofits. Do I get all kinds of letters and input, and do I give? Yes, outside the church. I will say one thing about the church. The church tends to, and this is my opinion, tends to think, oh, everybody's going to know to give, and we're not going to. We encourage giving, but it's not like it's a big deal. Nonprofits of the world are aggressively coming after your congregation to give. They're writing them letters, they're writing them appreciation notes, they're doing a lot of that. So in some cases, I think the world is being louder about asking for money than the church is. And I think that's part of the reason you may see more people. We give to a charity that helps children. I get letters every month. I get requests. I get add-on requests. I get all kinds of things. And do we get really requests from at church? No. From the pulpit, we'll talk about what we're doing and brag about what we're doing. But the church has the message. What other nonprofit is saving people and providing life changes and heart changes? They're helping people, but the church is where the heart of giving and the heart of change occurs.
Yeah, and like when you think about, I mean, I know I'm a pastor, so some people may say you're biased, and when you look at the one thing that Jesus began that said the gates of hell will not prevail against it, it's the church. And I know that there have been some churches that have been failures in some ministries that have had big public failures. But the most good that I see in our community is accomplished by the local church, like in Owasso. And I look at them like our church, the mission center, the ministries of our church. We had a worship center filled with teenagers last night, hearing the gospel. Packed church of children last night. Bible studies going on, life change going on. And so I think I was with a lady the other day that said, the church has not been my primary target, but everything I give to, the church is doing. And
that's very good.
Yeah. And so I think that's an important discipline to understand our calling to further the kingdom of God through the church.
Yeah.
And
something else I want to lean into that you said, I hope it's freeing to our listeners. You didn't jump off the boat and start giving 10%.
No, I didn't.
You and your wife, you had to build up to that, like almost working out, like building up your muscles and building up your savings and learning.
We exercised our giving muscles, and they continued to increase.
Yeah. So how did?
But you had to start somewhere.
Yeah, you had to start somewhere. So how did you discern that was what you all were going to give?
We did budgeting, and we did a lot of things, and we kind of just really looked at our plan with the idea of where we wanted to go. If we wanted to hit 10%, how could we do that? And that was our approach. I don't know if it's a God-given thing or just we intellectually, but when you sit down with your spouse and pray, and if you both kind of come up with the same answer, that's pretty cool.
I'm so grateful that you're on today because, you know, our listeners, I want you to recognize this, the blessing of time with this giant. I know James would say, I'm not a giant of the faith, but he is. And I want you to catch something because we live in this American culture where we live on credit. You articulated something so wise that you would save up for that piece of furniture. Um, you would delay that gratification. I think that the wisdom of that, of taking steps of patience and the discipline of saving rather than consuming all you have. I mean, most people in America live above their means, but learning to live within their means and then becoming strategic. How how did you learn that discipline of just saving, giving, living?
I think that was part of, I don't want to overemphasize it. We grew up poor.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up, my father had a small ranch he bought with the money that he got from his World War II, being in World War II, coming back from, bought a small plot of land. Did not work off the farm. He had a fifth grade education. Background was very poor. Uh, my mother grew up in a cotton farm, seven brothers, very poor, and in today's standards. So we never had money. Money was weird. Mom made all of our clothes, and so it was it was like money was not one of those things that we just um, had excess of or we didn't take loans of. We grew on garden. We fed half the neighborhood. I mean, neighborhood meaning my closest neighbor was a mile away, but they would come eat with us all the time. We had food. We had cattle. We raised our food. I didn't know we were poor.
Hmm.
We had food to eat, and we had clothes to have, and it. Four of us lived. My three brothers and I were in one bedroom with bunk beds, and so that whole idea of giving and saving, it just never dawned on me that we started ever going into debt. I will say and admit, I had to borrow $500 for my wife and I to get married and go on our honeymoon. We had nothing. And that was one of the first things we paid off, by the way.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
But that just shows you that whole idea. Part of it's your heart.
Right.
What kind of people, legacy are you showing to your children?
Right.
If you're constantly buying and spending and living paycheck to paycheck, then what are they going to end up doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so my legacy, even though it was maybe not directionally or intentional, was you just really don't go into debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that, we started like a plan and an approach. And this won't even relate to some people, the envelope method.
Mm-hmm.
We physically put cash in different envelopes for food and travel and different expenses. And when the envelope ran out, we didn't rob out of another envelope. We just didn't do that. And so I think that is a great legacy that my folks showed even indirectly to me.
Mm-hmm.
That that's not really an option, and it or it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and learning to discipline yourself. Like so much of life is learning the discipline.
But that's not just money and giving.
Yeah, right.
It's everything.
Look at everything.
Right.
Look at what you say, how you act, what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Biblically, giving and money is a big part, but all the other principles in life are also about discipline of yourself and
Right.
what you do and how you act with people and how you treat people.
Right.
And the giving is more than just financial. The giving is how do I communicate? How do I treat you as an individual?
Mm-hmm.
That's giving. That respect kind
Yeah.
of activity.
You know, it's like this interesting biblical principle that Jesus talked about of it's the love of money that's the root of all evil.
It's not money itself.
Yeah, it's not
but
money
the
itself.
love of it.
And here's what's interesting in my life. I've been the minister to, and I won't say their names, but there's two families that I've been very close to throughout my journey that I would say are probably two of the wealthiest families in the state of Oklahoma. But what's interesting, neither one of those families love money. They've been very successful, in their businesses, but they don't have a love of money. But I've seen some very poor people that they're plagued by the love of money, buying lottery tickets or buying gambling or different things, and there's a love of money there that is destructive.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important concept of us learning you both mentioned the building the muscles of generosity and giving.
How did you protect yourself, you and your wife? How did you protect yourselves from the love of money as you built these disciplines into your life?
It's a great question. I believe you and your partner hold each other accountable. I think that's really important. I think that kind of staying away from the credit card instant gratification kind of thing is actually having someone, whether it's your spouse or someone else, that will hold you a little bit of accountable. Well, where are you? I mean, we talk about accountability groups, both for spiritual activities. Well, if you have a problem in that area, I think you should grab somebody that can help you even financially. How'd you spend your money? Let me sit down with you with your budget. Let me see where you spend. I don't have a budget. Well, that could be number one problem. Now, do I always maintain a budget now? I'm kind of where I don't have to be as dogmatic about a budget today in my life, and that's a real blessing. And part of that is back to the part of saving money. For the most part, you're putting money in. 30, 40 years down the road, you're making more off the investments of your money than you are your salary. And that is a huge blessing, which guess what? Fuels your ability to give. If I am constantly 30 years later and I'm still just paying interest and paying notes and paying off credit cards, not saying you can't give, you have limited your ability to give.
And I would assume also 34 years in, you and your wife have good training on how much to spend. And so you don't need the rules of the budget to not spend frivolously anymore.
That's right. I can just tell you, it's weird in a way, but you can walk into a store, Academy Sports. I can walk the aisles, walk out the store without buying anything and knowing I could have bought anything in that store I wanted to. And so it's a change. We keep talking about it, and I want to emphasize, it's a change of heart. Until people start releasing money and having an open hand, they will not feel the release about those kinds of things. Financially, they'll tell you, well, you're going to go buy something. Instead of swiping their credit card, sit there and shell out $400 worth of $20 bills and feel it. And that's what you feel, is a little bit more of that. And as you get into giving, you feel it. And you start thinking about, is that a wise investment? I think I told you one time, I read an article. I've never met a former tither.
Yeah.
Once you start tithing, there's no thought of, I shouldn't tithe. Once you get the discipline of that, it's like, I have lots of regrets about maybe a bad investment I made or even a bad purchase or something along those lines. I was talking to my wife. I don't think we have ever had any regret of somebody we gave money to or the money that we get in the church. Even if you look at your end of your statement, it's a big number.
Yeah.
You're going, could we make it bigger?
Yeah.
And it's just it's a heart.
Right.
And I that's the main thing I would want to say is the biggest blessing and the biggest return you will get on giving is your change of your heart.
Yeah. That is so.
That's a nugget.
Listeners, I just want to encourage you to really think about what James is saying, this giant of the faith that is in front of us today. James, that's just gold of just how so much of our giving problem is a heart problem.
Well, it's Matthew 6:21, I think it is. It says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be.
Right.
I can't emphasize that enough. That one verse just tells it.
And so the challenge is, I don't know how strong your giving muscles are, but I want to challenge all of us as we serve the Lord together in church and life, that we build our giving muscles. James, I just want you to just kind of wrap up, summarize the discipline of giving for us today? Just summarize. Just take it.
I just can't repeat in my life the changes it's made to my life and my wife's life. Both, I think I said, giving is fun. And I am so thankful God's given me the ability to give, but also that I get to see the gifts. And I think that applies to how we share our faith and it's not just giving, it's the way you live life. And I think it's foundationally, though, it's got to come out of, are you the right kind of person? Go to Titus and look at the characteristics of it. I mean, we often read that for a deacon or for an elder.
Right. Titus 1.
Those are life for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, being
Characteristics.
honest. You just go down through that list. And I think those are the kinds of things that you've got to start preparing your first is being saved. I mean, if Jesus Christ isn't the Lord of your life, you're never going to get this. And once you pass that, then it's maturity, not only in giving, it's maturity in your Christian life. And I think that's the biggest part I would say is increase all of those muscles, not just your giving muscle, your reading muscle, your praying, all of the components that go along with that. And will you be a better person? Well, absolutely. But it'll just strengthen you and grow you in an area that you just feel good.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that I had
Let's keep going.
was being in somewhat of leadership in the church.
Yeah.
Especially being a part of the finance committee or whatever. I see how the church handles funds and the shortness of some of those funds in certain things that restrict our level of ministry. And those are the kinds of things that also make my heart hurt, but also excites me about the opportunities we have if we are a giving church, what we could be doing. And that's not just about facilities. That's also about the whole idea of services to people and how we can help people and minister to those people. And I see the staff. I see how hard they work and the number of volunteers that are in our church. Why wouldn't you invest in our church? What are other churches? I mean,
Right.
if you're a member of a local church, why wouldn't you invest there? Your funds are being multiplied.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about this, the parable of the sower. You're giving, and yet you're seeing all of these things that happen because now you're empowering volunteers, you're empowering activities and church service activities that are going on that's changing lives. Your dollar is way more than a dollar.
Yeah.
And if I give to another organization, maybe they help children or maybe they buy food or they feed someone. It's back to the old saying about teach someone to fish and instead of just giving them a fish.
Right.
And the church is doing that.
Yeah.
The church is teaching people how to grow and to reach each other. And I just see our church and how we spend money and how the accountability of that money is used and the growth of that and the things that we need and to meet the growing expansion. Owasso is a growing city, just like a lot of towns are. And we have a growing church and there are needs. And those needs, it's the best investment you can make.
And together we can do a whole lot in this place where we live.
We live. Oh,
And that's why I love partnering together right here, because it's impacting our community for the good.
Yes.
And, thank you for serving on our finance team. And, I think that's important to the blessing of being the church, because like as a pastor, I went to seminary. I don't have the expertise in finance that you do. And so it's great to come alongside of you and have you teach me as a pastor. And you've done that, and I'm grateful for the way you help us manage our money.
Yeah, and I'm pretty well encouraging you. You have not because you've asked not.
Right.
And just like I said, the other nonprofits of the world are touching every member of your congregation on a regular basis. And I believe it's important for you to make the word that this is the best investment you can possibly make, is giving money to church and the Lord's worship. And are those other nonprofits good? Absolutely. I'm not discrediting them, but there's a better.
Yeah.
Don't just do good, do the best.
Right. And and the church is the only thing that God said, the gates of hell will not prevail against it.
And it's so good to give to organizations that serve other communities.
Right.
But we can't be so farsighted that we miss our own community right here.
Right.
There's
Where
something
God
so
called
powerful
us.
about just putting our resources and our time and our love into this place too.
But not only a church, we serve Owasso.
Yeah.
We serve a greater Owasso.
Right.
We serve Tulsa. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
great commission.
Right.
You go outside, we actually are now servicing missionaries all over the world. So it checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, the church does. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
What a blessing today.
Thank you.
You know, James, thank you so much for your time today.
James, we are grateful to have your wisdom. We're grateful to learn from you today. Thank you for being a giant of the faith who has practiced giving and for sharing the little bits you've learned along the way with us. Listeners, I hope you'll keep joining us as we continue our season talking about the different disciplines in the church. It's a total body workout kind of season. We're talking lots of different muscle groups to work on. But I hope you'll join us. I hope you'll join us in practicing what it looks like to actually follow Jesus, to imitate him, and to live like he did.
And you got to start somewhere. So get a budget. Know where your money goes. Pay attention to how you're giving, you're saving, and you're spending. And I want to challenge you. Let's learn from this giant of the faith. James, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll catch us next time on Time with Giants. Thank you for joining us today. Remember, following Jesus means that we seek to do as he did. Whether you are learning more about spiritual disciplines or simply sitting at his feet, we pray that our conversations here might be a stepping stone on your journey to know God and make him known. As always, our prayer is Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may overflow with hope. Has our podcast been a blessing to you? Help us out by subscribing to our podcast and sharing it with others. To be a monthly supporter, click on the link in the show notes or go to our website at alifeworthfollowing.org. See you next time on Time with Giants.